Karen throws epic tantrum over football game. Petty revenge. The air in the Ravens' nest vibrated with anticipation. Another Sunday, another Ravens game, another chance for Baltimore to collectively lose its mind. I loved it. As a bartender, I thrived on the energy. Today felt different though. The energy was there, but it was fractious, like static electricity building before a storm. I wiped down the already spotless bar, making a mental note to stock up on Natty Bow. Gamma time meant Natty Bow time around here. Mark, the manager, was pacing near the entrance, adjusting the wait to be seated sign like it had personally offended him. He always got antsy on game days. "Liam, you ready for this?" he asked, his voice a little too high-pitched. "Born ready, Mark," I replied, popping the top on a bottle of sparkling water. "Think we'll break the record for most crab pretzels sold." He managed a weak smile. "Just try to keep the peace, okay? We got a full house today. Don't need any incidents." Famous last words. The first wave of fans crashed in, a sea of purple jerseys and excited chatter. I started slinging drinks, calling out orders to Chef Tony in the kitchen. The TVs flickered to life, showing pre-game analysis and hype reels. The roar in the bar intensified. Then she walked in. Karen. Her real name was probably Brenda or Susan, but Karen just fit. She had the signature helmet of perfectly coiffed, suspiciously blonde hair, the pinched expression, and the air of someone who believed the world owed her a personal apology. Trailing behind her, looking like a lost puppy, was her husband, Bob. He was a quiet, unassuming guy in a golf polo shirt. They were seated at a table near one of the larger TVs, right in the thick of it. I immediately felt bad for Bob. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I approached their table, forcing a smile. "What can I get for you folks?" Karen wrinkled her nose. "This is awfully loud. And football, really?" Bob cleared his throat. "I wanted to catch the UGG golf tournament." And I, Karen cut him off, agreed to humor him. But I expected a more refined atmosphere. She gestured around the crowded bar with disdain. I bit back a sarcastic remark. "Well, ma'am, we are a sports bar. The Ravens are playing today. Can't you change the channel?" she asked, her voice dripping with entitlement. "Just on this one TV. To the golf." "I'm sorry, ma'am," I said, trying to keep my tone polite, "but most of our customers are here to watch the game. I can't really change the channel." "This is outrageous," she huffed. "I'm a paying customer. I demand to speak to the manager." Mark, who had been hovering nearby like a nervous hummingbird, practically jumped to our table. "Is everything all right here?" "No, everything is not all right," Karen snapped. "This bartender refuses to change the channel to the golf tournament. My husband wants to watch golf, and we're being subjected to this barbaric spectacle." Mark shot me a pleading look. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but as you can see, we're quite busy with the football game. Perhaps I can offer you a table in a quieter area." He gestured towards a few empty tables near the back, away from the main TVs. "Absolutely not," Karen declared. "We want to sit here. And we want to watch golf." Bob mumbled something about being okay with football, but Karen glared at him and he quickly shut his mouth. The Ravens game started. The bar exploded in cheers as the Ravens kicked off. Karen flinched like she'd been slapped. "Lower the volume," she shrieked. "This is unbearable," I sighed inwardly. This was going to be a long afternoon. I lowered the volume a little, but it was barely noticeable. The bar was too loud, the energy too high. It was a losing battle. Karen continued to complain, every few minutes demanding that I change the channel, lower the volume, or otherwise cater to her every whim. I tried to be patient, but her constant negativity was starting to wear me down. "Can I at least get a refill on my water?" she asked, snapping her fingers at me. "Of course," I said, grabbing her glass and heading to the soda gun. As I filled it, I saw Sarah, a regular, approaching the table. Sarah was a nurse at the local hospital, a no-nonsense woman with a sharp wit and an even sharper sense of justice. She was also a die-hard Ravens fan. "Excuse me, ma'am," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. I couldn't help but overhear. "This is a Ravens bar, on game day. If you don't like it, maybe you should go somewhere else." Karen turned to Sarah, her eyes narrowed. "And who are you to tell me what to do?" "Just someone who wants to watch the game in peace," Sarah replied, "without having to listen to you complain every 5 minutes." "I am a paying customer," Karen repeated, her voice rising. "I have a right to be here. You have a right to be here," Sarah conceded. "But you don't have a right to ruin everyone else's fun." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. I knew this was about to escalate. I finished filling Karen's water glass and brought it back to the table, hoping to diffuse the situation. "Here you go, ma'am," I said, placing the glass in front of her. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" "Yes," Karen said, her voice dripping with venom. "I want a full refund on my meal. And I want you to change the channel to the golf tournament, or I'm going to write the worst review this place has ever seen." Mark paled. He hated negative reviews. They were his personal kryptonite. "Ma'am, I really can't change the channel," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "But I can offer you a discount on your meal. How about 50 off?" Karen seemed to consider this for a moment. Then a wicked smile spread across her face. "All right," she said, 50 off. And I want a free dessert. The most expensive one you have." Mark, defeated, nodded weakly. "Of course, ma'am. Anything for you." I couldn't believe it. He was caving. He was letting her get away with it. The game was getting intense. The Ravens were down by 7 points with only a few minutes left on the clock. The bar was a frenzy of nervous energy. Every eye was glued to the TVs. Suddenly, Karen stood up. She marched towards one of the TVs and reached for the remote. "I've had enough," she shouted. "I'm changing the channel myself." Before I could react, she grabbed the remote and started frantically pressing buttons. The screen flickered, and the Ravens game was replaced by a golf swing. The bar erupted in outrage. Boos and jeers rained down on Karen. People started yelling at her to put the game back on. I rushed towards her, grabbing the remote from her hand. "Ma'am, you can't do that," I said, my voice tight with anger. "You're disrupting the entire bar." "I'll disrupt whatever I want," she screamed. "I'm a paying customer and I'm tired of this football nonsense." Chef Tony, who had been watching the scene unfold from the kitchen, came storming out, his face red with fury. "Leave him alone, lady," he roared. "You're ruining the game for everyone." Karen recoiled in fear. Chef Tony was a big guy, and he looked like he was about to explode. "Bob," Karen shouted, turning to her husband for support. "Do something, tell them to leave me alone." Bob, who had been shrinking into his chair, looked up at his wife with a pained expression. "Honey," he mumbled, "maybe we should just go." "Go?" Karen shrieked. "After all this?" "Absolutely not. I'm not backing down." The Ravens were driving down the field. Every second was precious. The tension in the bar was unbearable. And then Karen did the unthinkable. She reached out and pulled the fire alarm. A deafening siren filled the bar. Red strobe lights flashed, casting an eerie glow on the panicked faces of the patrons. People started screaming and running for the exits. Chaos reigned. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew she was responsible. I saw her do it. I pushed my way through the crowd towards Karen. She was standing near the alarm, a smug look on her face. "You did this," I shouted, pointing my finger at her. "You pulled the fire alarm, so what if I did?" She sneered. "You wouldn't change the channel. Now nobody gets to watch anything." Just then, Mike, the bouncer, a mountain of a man with a shaved head and a perpetually unimpressed expression, appeared beside me. He'd clearly been alerted by the alarm. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "She pulled the fire alarm," I said, pointing at Karen. Mike looked at Karen, then back at me. "Is that true?" Karen opened her mouth to deny it, but before she could speak, a voice boomed from the back of the bar. "She did it. I saw her. It was Sarah," pointing accusingly at Karen. Mike grabbed Karen by the arm, his grip like a vise. "Come with me," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Karen struggled, but Mike was too strong. He dragged her towards the exit, her protests fading into the din of the alarm. Mark, who had been cowering behind the bar, finally emerged, looking pale and shaken. What happened?" he stammered. "She pulled the fire alarm," I said, my voice still trembling with anger, "because we wouldn't change the channel to the golf tournament." Mark stared at me in disbelief. She pulled the fire alarm?" I nodded. "Yeah, and guess what? It's not even linked to the fire department. It's the stage alarm, just for show. Pure chaos." A collective groan went through the remaining patrons. It was one thing to pull the fire alarm and make everyone evacuate. To do it over golf with a fake alarm. Mark finally seemed to snap out of his stupor. He took a deep breath and straightened his tie. "Okay," he said, his voice regaining some of its authority. "That's it. I've had enough. Mike, get her out of here and call the police." Mike nodded and dragged Karen out the door, her screams echoing in the street. I reset the TVs. The crowd cheered as the football game started up. The Ravens were in the red zone. Time was running out. The rest of the game was a blur. The Ravens scored a touchdown in the final seconds, winning the game by 1 point. The bar exploded in jubilation. People were high-fiving, hugging, and chanting "Ravens, Ravens, Ravens." It was a scene of pure, unadulterated joy. Sarah bought me a celebratory drink. "You handled that, Karen, like a pro," she said, raising her glass. "I'm buying all the beers tonight." I took a sip of my beer, the adrenaline slowly draining from my body. "It was insane," I said. "I can't believe she actually pulled the fire alarm." "Some people are just crazy," Sarah said, shaking her head. "But hey, at least we won the game." Later, after the bar had emptied out and I was cleaning up, Mark approached me. "Liam," he said, his voice sincere, I wanted to thank you. You handled that situation incredibly well. I know I wasn't much help. It's okay, Mark, I said. It's over now, I know, he said, but I appreciate you. And I'm giving you a raise, I smiled. Thanks, Mark, I appreciate that. A few days later, I saw a scathing review of the Raven's Nest online. It was filled with lies and exaggerations, painting me as an incompetent and rude bartender. I knew it was Karen. But then, something amazing happened. A flood of positive reviews started pouring in, overwhelming Karen's negative review. They were from regulars, from first-time visitors, from people who had witnessed the incident firsthand. They praised the atmosphere, the food, and the service. And they all raved about how I had handled the Karen situation with professionalism and grace. Karen's review was buried, forgotten. The Raven's Nest continued to thrive, and the story of the Karen who pulled the fire alarm over golf became a legendary tale, told and retold at the bar for years to come. I even saw something about Karen on a social media post shared by Sarah. Apparently, she'd been banned from a local golf club for disruptive behavior. Karma's a tricky thing, but sometimes it gets it just right. And me, I just kept slinging drinks, watching the games, and enjoying the chaotic energy of the Raven's Nest. After all, it was just another Sunday in Baltimore.